troubles of the world. Soon we'll be done with the troubles of the world, going home to live with God.
I came at this from the standpoint of the church. The 1960s were, for me, the 30s of my age. And very exciting years. I was serving in my second congregation just outside of Columbus, Ohio, maybe a 400-member church. And I'm a product of a segregated high school in St. Louis County, of all places, and a segregated college in North Carolina, which you would expect. So I was not, involved in my growing up years with the black community. But, and I don't know all the dates, I haven't looked them up because I don't know them. But anyway, what really struck me, got my conscience going, was reading Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham jail. Remember that letter?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Ooh. That 9 white clergy had written a letter to the newspaper addressed to King, and in a sense saying, you're going too fast, slow it down, we can't move that fast. And he sat down in jail and wrote this magnificent reply. At the time when I read it, I felt very badly that the New Testament canon had been closed, because that belonged in the New Testament. That was a letter to the churches. And I also realized, gee, I'm the church. That's speaking to me. So it really got my juices going. This wonderful church I was serving became aware of a real shift in my conscience and my delivery and my speaking. Modestly involved in the community. There are not many African American families in this town that I was pastoring, but so there maybe were 10 children, maybe 12, I don't know. But there was only one swimming pool. It was a private pool built by a family who owned the property next to them. They put a pool in there, and they created a private membership, and of course it was all white, and they were members of my church. So I had a number of conversations with Bill O'Hara, and what about those people? God bless him, he finally said, okay, I'll open it up. And he did. I don't know whether they ever went swimming there. I didn't pay attention to the traffic in the pool, but it was done. And I felt very pleased that we'd made an accomplishment. I attended the Washington March. Drove down to Portsmouth, Ohio, where the train was coming through from Chicago, I think, and it just picked up all these people all along the way and delivered us in Washington in the early morning, and spent the day there, and that night took the train back. A marvelous, wonderful experience. But there are 2 items that I wanted to really focus on. Voter registration in Mississippi. There were pickets, and this is moving very slowly because they just weren't opening up the voting rights to the African Americans. So, and picketing is not easy work. Picketing is hard, and most of them don't last very long. People give a couple of days and they're done. And I think the authorities know, just wait it out, it'll go away. And they just go away. Well, I took part in a picket that didn't go away. And the reason was that in New York, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, and the Mennonites, and I think there might have been one other denomination, I don't remember, talked together about whether they could find recruits from around about to go down and spend a week And I was recruited out of Columbus. And a friend of mine was recruited. So the two of us went together, two Presbyterians, and we went down to Hattiesburg. We flew out Sunday afternoon, had the morning church services. Sunday afternoon we went out, flew down to Hattiesburg, and we were housed in the black community in a TV repair shop. They brought in several cots, and there were about 8 or 9 altogether. I remember 2 Mennonites that I really respected highly. There was a Methodist minister that I thought wanted to get arrested. He was a pain in the butt. I had to, before we left, one of the rules was we had to have secured sufficient monies from somebody that in case we were arrested, there'd be bail money. And I sought out an attorney friend of mine at the church, and he was supportive of this, and he said, I will put it up if that happens. We didn't think it would happen, but you never know. The primary reason why we didn't think it would happen was that the city of Hattiesburg did not want national attention. That would just explode across the country. What they told us was, they can arrest you for flipping a cigarette butt, crumpling up your chewing gum and throwing the wrapper away, or loitering. Or, we always had people around us not appreciating what we were doing, walking this front of the courthouse, what we did every morning. Well, let me just back it up. Our group was put into 2 parts. In the morning, one group would picket, the other group would go house to house encouraging families to vote. And then in the afternoon, we would switch. So while you were picketing, a lot of walking. I tell you, after 5 days, my legs were very sore. But there were always people over here and over here and there having some obscene things to say to us. Creative comments. Occasionally one would venture forth to kind of meet up with us and spit. And we were told no retaliation. This is nonviolent. No retaliation. If you do, you're the one that goes to jail, not the others. So if they spit in your face, you just get out your Kleenex. If they, nobody touched us, fortunately, but you don't touch them back. And that was instilled within us that we were to do our job and to ignore what was happening around there. Our pictures were taken the first morning and were not in the newspaper the next day, not with names, but there they were. And so people knew who we were. We tried to get appointments with for us, the Presbyterian pastors, but it's funny, they were always out of town. Never got in. I don't blame them. We were doing what they could not do. And that was okay. The only clergy person that would see us was the Jewish rabbi. And we got an appointment with him, but he said, you come out late at night, don't get there before 11, and you make sure you're not being followed. So we made some meanderings around and went out to see him, and we talked quite lengthily about the situation and the tensions and so forth. So the mornings we pick up, the afternoon went house to house, door to door, encouraging these people, and that was it was a delightful task, but we found out in the evening how difficult it would be for black people to register, because their names were published in the paper the next day. And most of these people were domestics, and they were fired, just like that. In the evening, we all gathered for rallies at different places in Hattiesburg. And these would be a couple hours where there would be testimonials and encouragements, and we were introduced. And then you hear these stories from Mrs. Jones, who was let go yesterday. She had been working 5 years at this house, this home, as a cook or whatever. She was fired. Very, very difficult. But they were upbeat, they were courageous, and I think they knew that they were on the winning side. And fortunately, Congress ultimately passed those laws that didn't require picketing anymore. Okay, that was for us an extremely meaningful experience. I flew out Sunday afternoon, flew back home to my family Saturday afternoon, so I didn't miss a Sunday in church, and life went on. But I'll never forget it. It was my venture in what I called into a foreign country. It was that different. The other thing I want to share with you is that I was aware that a great many statements had been produced by organizations. Academic organizations would produce things, and the church, through its councils, Presbytery would write a council statement, and Synod would write a statement, and General Assembly would write a statement. But I was asking myself, what's being said in the churches? Is anything being said in the churches on Sunday morning where people are worshiping? I didn't know, and I don't think you can find out. But I decided that I would produce a book. And so I did. I gathered 20 good sermons. I had some help in locating who the preachers ought to be contacted, and they sent me their sermons. And one came from Martin Luther King, and I had 19 others. They had to be sermons preached in a live congregation. This is no academic exercise or no lecture. Sermon with people sitting there listening to this sermon on civil rights justice. And I sent it to Harper and Row, and they liked it very much, but they refused it. Too bad. I sent it to Abington, and they grabbed it, and it was published. And it had a long life. It was national, and it was just very gratifying to see my book. The library here doesn't have it. And I don't have it. I would have brought a copy, but my library is all packed up in storage down in Maryland. That's where we're going to end up. And everything, my files, everything is all stored. So I don't have it. I'm sorry. But it's
what was the name of that book?
The Pulpit Speaks on Race.
I think I may have it in a box.
You might have it. Well, it had a good run. It was a delight to receive all the reviews as far away as Australia. And I think it made a contribution. This was fodder for those who wanted to, help them put together a sermon that was viable. Two other little footnotes, and I guess they're ego trip footnotes. While we were in Columbus during the 60th General Assembly met there, I forget the date of the year, and I had been asked by the planning committee to prepare a short program for the commissioners of General Assembly, the Presbyterian National Conclave, a short civil rights thing, and I, with help, wrote to Coretta Scott King. Her husband could not come, but Coretta could, and so she came up. And we'd arranged for her to have a short message to the commissioners, and then I asked her and my beloved wife, Wileen, who's right there, to sing a duet, 2 songs. And they sang 2 songs together. And it was neat. Kind of enjoyed that. And then secondly, to my great surprise, 3 years ago, I was invited to be the keynote speaker at the Greeley, Colorado Martin Luther King rally in January. The University of Northern Colorado students and the city of Greeley people joint invitation, and we met in the square of Greeley, Colorado this morning, and it was 8 degrees above zero. It was bitterly cold. So whole crowd of us walked and sang all the way over to the Civic Center, where they fortunately had hot chocolate for us. And we had a good program. They had all kinds of things going, and certain essays and other kinds of contributions. And then they allowed me to deliver the keynote address, which I did, and went over pretty well. But I was talking about my concerns and involvement and the role that Martin Luther King played in the whole civil rights matter. For me, this is a high point chapter in my life, in my career. I am so eternally grateful for the church that I was serving. An awful lot of my colleagues didn't survive in their churches, but this church never, ever turned. They were learning, and they knew it. And we had a wonderful ministry there. It was my second out of 4. But just a happy relationship, and they grew, and they became just a very solid group of people who could handle new things that were not what a part of their upbringing, and it grew. So I'm privileged, and I thank you for allowing
Stay right there, Al.
me to share
I got
this.
questions.
So, yes.
First of all, you go down there for 1 week to Mississippi, and you come back for the Sunday sermon. That's got to be, I'd be curious to see what it is that you said that you probably weren't ready to say the Sunday before.
Good question. And I don't know whether I did right or not, but I did not tell the congregation I was going. Sometimes you anticipate things in people's lives, and I knew the risk was if I got arrested, they sure would know. But I just kind of went away. And but when I got back Saturday, the next day, I did tell them. This past week I have been. And then that first week back, I wrote a long report, a 5-page typewritten long report on the background and everything about it, copied it, had those copies to the congregation. And it was okay with the congregation. I blessed them, because some others might say no. The one thing, I reflecting on this is what I call new church development. Some of you know, I started that church. And so these are young families with young children. And just like with the homosexual issue today, young people can understand it, older people can't. Young people, young families can understand this matter. We didn't have a lot of old people, so I didn't have to worry about them. It'd be a different situation if I was somewhere else. And they took it in stride, bless their hearts. And we had wonderful dialogue, wonderful questions, wonderful growing. At no time did they say, we got to get rid of that guy, which can happen very easily in a church, you know. A lot of that kind of activity takes place. And I lost a lot of friends who used to be in ministry, and they're not. But anyway, when I got back, I did come clean and gave a report on where I had been and promised that I would give a detailed report, which I wrote that week, and they got it. And life went on.
Did you find that your sermon, your tenor of your sermon that Sunday was different than probably the previous Sunday? Because of the experience?
I can't remember. I'm sure it must have been, because I was really, really into it. And I just had a very moving experience. Certain amount of fearfulness. We had to be very careful. I had one call to make to Wileen, but they said, you're probably going to be listened to, so be careful what you say. You know, I just wanted to know I was there, safe and sound, and I'll see her on Saturday. Yeah, but it was good. And the church didn't lose any members, and we didn't lose any money. We just moved right along. But I think they knew that we were on the cutting edge, and I think they liked that.
Your wife had a chance, of course, to sing a couple of songs with Coretta Scott King, and I will ask you to sing those songs before this is over. And
I can't even remember what they
I don't
were.
remember what they were either.
well, make them up.
Juanita can make them up.
Yeah, well, you and Juanita can make up some. But tell me about the family. I mean, you had family, and what was their reaction to this? Because this is sort of over-the-top stuff here.
Yeah, 2 children. They were young. Our son was maybe 5, 4. Our daughter was just an infant.
Yeah.
I don't think they knew what was going on. The next church was in Michigan, and I did get involved in some housing issues up there, and our son had a paper route into one sub, and he got a lot of flack from some members because his father was messing around with stuff it's none of his business. But in this particular one, the kids were unaffected, and the only problem Wileen faced, because I was gone in absentia, and
Some water main broken.
Yeah. They all come down to the house to find where the preacher is. He's not here.
Say.
But It was a rich experience.